There's a theory about George Pig that refuses to go away, because more and more moments in the show suggest that George Pig may have been adopted. And today, we're breaking down every strange detail that proves this may be true. Auntie Dottie. The theory that George Pig might not actually be Peppa's biological brother has been floating around for a while. But if George is adopted, where did he come from? And this is where the theory gets juicy, because some fans swear they've cracked it, and it all leads back to one mysterious relative the show mentions like she's a classified document, Auntie Dottie. She lives far away, she's barely mentioned, and when she is, it's always weirdly quiet and distant, like the family's stepping carefully around a secret they do not want Peppa blurting out at playgroup. Some fans even think it's because Auntie Dottie did something wrong, something the Pig family would rather pretend never happened. The first time we even hear her name is in the episode Horsey Twinkle Toes, when Peppa and George get a toy she sent from overseas. Cute, right? Except fans think it wasn't just a kind gesture. They think that the present was Auntie Dottie's way of staying connected, especially to one particular child, because she clearly didn't send anything for her sister or anyone else. And then comes the episode that lives rent-free in everyone's brain, Thanksgiving. Auntie Dottie finally shows up, and it's already weird because she arrives out of nowhere like, surprise, I'm here now. But the real detail people obsess over is this. She already knows Peppa, and she even says she hasn't seen her since Peppa was a baby. But then she meets George for the first time, and the way she reacts is what makes fans go, hold on. She hugs him, calls him handsome, smiles in that proud, watery-eyed way that doesn't feel like random aunt visiting once a decade. It feels more like a mom trying very hard to keep it together. So the theory goes like this. Auntie Dottie didn't move away for a change of scenery. She left because she had a baby she couldn't raise. And Mummy Pig, her older, or let's be honest, more organized sister, stepped in. That baby might have been George. And yes, it sounds wild, until you look at the timeline clue that fans love bringing up. In the episode Baby Bump, we see Mummy Pig heavily pregnant in an old family video. Most people assume that the baby is George. But wait, if Peppa is 4 and George is meant to be around 1.5, the timing in this doesn't sit perfectly, does it? So some fans believe Mummy Pig did have a baby, but the child was lost, and George was quietly adopted not long after. So if this adoption theory is even half true, let's just say that toy horse might not be the only thing Auntie Dottie ever sent over. The surname. Here's a strange detail the show handles very carefully. George is rarely called by his full name. Peppa is always Peppa Pig, Mummy Pig, Daddy Pig. Even background characters get their full titles shouted out proudly. But George? He's just George. The only time his full name is ever read out loud is in the episode Edmund Elephant's Birthday, when Mummy Pig opens an invitation addressed to George Pig, which honestly proves nothing, because Edmund's parents would obviously assume his surname matches the rest of the family. Which is interesting, because if George were adopted, quietly avoiding surnames starts to feel less accidental and more convenient. Adopted from another country. If George was adopted, then the next question isn't why he's quiet, it's why he's different. George doesn't just speak less than the other kids, he barely speaks at all, and when he does, it's usually one word. Fans have wondered for years whether this is just personality, or whether English simply isn't his first language. That theory takes on a very different tone in the episode International Day. Every child dresses to represent a country, and George doesn't pick something expected or playful. He wears a traditional Russian Cossack outfit, a very specific cultural choice, and stays silent the entire episode. If George was adopted from abroad, this stops being a random costume and starts looking like a hint. Some fans believe George may have been adopted from Eastern Europe, possibly even Georgia, which leads to one of the strangest coincidences in the entire show. A Reddit theory suggests his original name may have been George Gorey. Gorey is a real city in Georgia, and in Georgian, Gorey means pig. George Gorey literally translates to George Pig, and if that was his original name, it explains why he doesn't follow the same naming pattern as the other kids. He didn't break the pattern, he arrived with a different one. The dinosaur. George Pig's dinosaur isn't just a toy, it's his constant. He eats with it, sleeps with it, takes it everywhere. And in Peppa Pig, that's already unusual. Most toys come and go, depending on the episode, but this one never does. The strange detail shows up clearly in the episode George's New Dinosaur. When his dinosaur breaks, everything stops. Mummy and Daddy Pig try to replace it. They search, they panic, they even go to Mr. Fox's shop, a place that usually has everything. And yet, no one can find the same dinosaur again. Not a similar one, not a newer version, not even a knockoff. Which is odd because Peppa Pig toys are normally very replaceable, unless this one didn't come from around here. That idea gets more interesting in the episode Babies, where we see Granny Pig give George the dinosaur when he's very small. Most viewers assume she bought it, but the episode never actually says that, and if George was adopted, especially from another country, then the dinosaur starts to look less like a random toy and more like something sent for him from his biological family. A gift, a handover, a way to make sure something familiar stayed with him, which would explain why it's irreplaceable. The birthday problem. Let's talk about birthdays, because once you notice this, you can't unnotice it. Peppa's birthday parties are fun, but they're very normal Peppa Pig fun. Games, cake, friends, maybe a magician. Everyone goes home high on sugar. George's birthdays, those are events. His parties are laser focused on one thing, dinosaurs. Not, oh, he likes dinosaurs, more like, this entire day exists for dinosaurs and nothing else. Trips, attractions, big setups, museum takeovers, maximum effort, which raises a very simple question. Why does George's birthday feel like it has something to prove? Maybe it's because George came into the family in a slightly different way, and everyone's quietly making sure he never feels that. And honestly, if you were trying to make sure an adopted kid always felt included, that's exactly how you do it. Peppa adjusting. Here's something that starts to look a bit different once you view the show through the adoption theory. Peppa wasn't always a big sister. For a while, she had the house, the parents, and the attention all to herself. And then, fairly suddenly, George arrived, and everything changed. Now, to be clear, Peppa isn't unusually mean. She can be bossy with everyone. That's kind of her thing. But with George, it often feels different. She's a bit bossier with George than with anyone else. She corrects him more, tells him how to play, gets impatient faster. Not in a dramatic way, just in that very specific big sibling who used to be an only child way. If George really did arrive later, and not in the usual way, then that shift in behavior makes sense. Evie's arrival. If George was adopted, Evie Pig accidentally exposes it. Because when Evie arrives, the show does everything by the book. We see the pregnancy, we get the build-up, and everyone knows she's coming. There's a clear before and after. But George? No flashbacks, no proper origin moment, no neat "this is when George joined the family" episode. He's just there. Evie's arrival quietly highlights the difference. She gets a full introduction. George never did. Not because he isn't loved, he clearly is, but because his story didn't start the same way. And once you notice that contrast, it's hard to unsee it. Because in Peppa Pig, babies usually come with an explanation. George didn't. And that might be the strangest detail of all. So when you put all of this together, the timing, the distance, the quiet details the show never explains, it starts to feel less like a coincidence and more like George could have been adopted. Nothing in Peppa Pig ever confirms it, but nothing really denies it either. What do you think? Is George Pig adopted, or are we reading too much into the clues? Let us know in the comments. And if you like Peppa Pig theories, hidden details, and questions the show definitely doesn't answer, check out the other videos on the channel. We'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.